Reminder, Project 7 is due next week, Friday. I think I managed to write it there. Do please start soon. As Dan and I will attest, doing the second part of the project takes about 20 minutes to run a real fast computer, Dan. So if you are one of those people who was trying to do MATLAB over the portal, yeah, this will take a long time to start early so that you don't run into time crunch at the end. First part should be awfully fast. The second part will take time. Runtime is please start soon. We don't want to kill the computer network next week. And if you don't start till Wednesday next week, you pretty much have no shot to finish. So. Yes, there you go. Okay. And Justin, particularly Justin.
It's natural selection. We're using up all the networks so no one else can finish the products for their classes.
And a reminder yet again, the final exam is the Wednesday of finals week, 7 to 9 p.m. over in class of 50. So you get some nice tiered seating and you can do all your fun stuff there. So it should be good. Let me get a little structure. Pardon? You can see all of an entirely different room this time.
Something like that, yeah.
Which is always fun and nice and exciting. Okay, we will see how this goes. Dan is here, partly to get laughs, but also partly because if it turns out I can't write without erasing everything I'm writing, he will take over. Okay, so last time we kind of discussed the basic issues of maximum likelihood estimation. We kind of talked about what that really is. And we just want to go back and remind you that we're looking at a case of detection, which is essentially the idea that we want to identify, no, not identify, sorry, we want to assess the presence or detect the presence of a given parameter value in the system. And we kind of look at that here for an example using maximum likelihood estimation, which, if you recall, was essentially optimizing one of two equations. We can write this as the maximum, our maximum f of x given theta. So in other words, we want to find the theta for which the probability that we get our measurements or observations of x is maximized. Okay, so this kind of should be a relatively intuitive concept. And then we also pointed out that this could be rewritten in the converse as the equation of probability that we have a given theta, a particular theta given our x. So we just want to be able to look at this from two perspectives. Or we're just going to be trying to maximize this probability, conditional probability density. Okay. Both of these are technically probability densities. We just aren't calling this an F because of the fact that theta is a parameter. It's kind of a previously known or fixed value quantity, not necessarily a random variable. Okay. But here, this given is exactly what you're accustomed to seeing. So, let's see if I can find this. Okay. So ultimately, we have our estimate of that theta value, maximizing that probability. So I want to work through an example today. This is going to be a binary transmission system. What that means is I'm going to have I'm going to send out one of two possible signals. So let's get over to about here. Example, binary transmission system. It is very interesting writing on the chalkboard and fixing my hand. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to have here is a condition where we can transmit, in effect, A or minus A. So this is why we're calling this a binary transmit system. We got two possible options. Specifically, what we want to do is we want to say that we have an underlying signal X. Okay? Which takes on A or minus A as the following distribution. That piece of X of X, I'm using this as a PMF because I've got a discrete value random variable here, just remember that. So this is equal to A with probability P, minus A with probability 1 minus P. Okay? And otherwise, obviously, it's 0. But you probably figured that out. Okay? Now, what we want to deal with is let Y be our receive signal, which is X plus some noise process N, and specifically, just because of the scare the crap out of you guys, we haven't really dealt with it much, let's call this a Gaussian noise. Okay, so we haven't really dealt with this PDL very much. And let us be given that X and N are independent of one another, orthogonal essentially, and that N can be described as a normal random variable with 0 mean and variance sigma n squared. Okay? Eraser. Chalkboard. Okay, yeah. What we want to do is, obviously, we want to make sure that we make an accurate estimate of the X. We want to detect realistically when X is, for example, A, or when X is minus A. We want to know that X has been transmitted and be able to correctly identify that given X. So, to find the MLE of X, okay, given a single observation of Y. This will be our target here. So what we need to do is, if you recall, we're going to need to determine, first of all, the probability density function for f of Y given theta. Okay, so that we can actually then map out essentially an equation we can test. So, first off, f of Y given theta. We have two possible values for this in some context, all right? We have f sub Y of Y given theta equal to A, and f sub Y of Y given theta equal to minus A. So remember that these two cases here take up the entire possible parameter space. Okay? We can have an amplitude, so I'm really treating this theta as the amplitude of X. All right? That makes sense to everybody? Okay. So given that, what do we want to do? Well, let's first of all go back and recognize how Y is constructed. Y is the sum of X, which ultimately is a constant value, signal A or minus A, plus a 0 mean Gaussian noise. Now, f sub n of n is then 1 over sigma root 2 pi e to the minus n squared over 2 sigma n squared, okay? So we know that that is the distribution of our noise, because it is Gaussian with 0 mean and a variance sigma n squared. I am simply going to get Y, which is going to be this noise distribution offset in flux space by either A or minus A. So that means that my distribution for Y can be written as 1 over sigma n square root 2 pi e to the minus, now Y, the amplitude is A, my mean should be A, and then when the amplitude is minus A, sigma n root 2 pi e to the minus Y plus A squared over 2 sigma n squared. All right, I don't think I screwed anything up there. So that should make sense to everybody. Does everybody understand that Y now, those are the conditional distributions of Y? I have a known mean because I have transmitted a specific amplitude. So I know what my mean is, but because these are technically impulses, right? So the way to think about this is the traditional case. X is, technically speaking, this, okay? This is A, this is minus A, this is of amplitude P, this is of amplitude 1 minus P, correct? So when I have a sum of independent random variables, what happens to their densities? What's the density of Y then? Anybody remember an operation you learned the crap out of in 202? No? Convolution, thank you! So the sum of two independent random variables results in a convolution. So it should make sense that what I'm really getting here is assuming I already met A, I have a Gaussian centered at A. And assuming, which is what that given effectively does, I'm at minus A, I have a Gaussian centered at minus A. Okay, so that's why my noise distribution just shifts to that new mean, and that's why these are my conditional density functions. All right? This would be it.
How does sum relate to convolution?
Because the sum leads to the convolution. We derived that a while back. We're not going to derive it again. You can go look it back up. It's there. It's in the notes.
The characteristic
Function. Yes. Remember, so if you have a characteristic function, it's e the expected value of e to the j omega x plus n, which factors. Therefore, we get the product. So we get convolution. Okay? This is just Fourier transform. It's a product of Fourier transforms. It's a convolution of the Fourier transform. Okay, so here we go. So this now is giving us our functions, and logically then, by extension, we anticipate that, if we cared about it, if we don't really need it here, the expected value of this distribution is our mean, which is going to be A. The expected value of this distribution is going to be minus A. And the variance of each of these distributions is just the variance of the noise, because each of the X distributions was an impulse, as we've just translated. Okay, so that's what we're going to get there. Now, if you recall from last lecture, we can create a likelihood ratio which I'll use out again, which over and over all today without. And that I can take as the distribution density of Y given A over Y given minus A. What am I doing here? To get to maximum likelihood, I am trying to go back to that argmax function. I am trying to determine the parameter theta that maximizes the conditional density f sub y given theta. This likelihood ratio has a very nice property. What I'm really doing here is by comparing these two values, the value of the conditional density for it being A to the value of the conditional density for it being minus A, if this ratio is greater